what does the client journey look like and where might those disputes show up?
Do you want people on Reddit talking about your sketchy billing practices or your great products?
Proactive legal support is almost always cheaper and less stressful than reactive.
All right. Hello and welcome back to Revenue Rascals. And today I have my dear friend, my personal attorney, and the best darn small business attorney you will ever find. And we are going to talk about all the things you need to know as a small business owner. Welcome, Keren de Zwart. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. I was thinking about it right before I hit record of how long we have known each other. And I believe that I met you the first month of opening my business. So that would be 7 years ago almost.
That sounds about right. Yes.
So, okay. My favorite thing about you is that you're so matter of the fact and so simple with like, this is what you need to do to protect your small business or your online business. And you've always just like said it as how it is, been very like even keeled. And I've always felt like, I'm going to be okay in business because I have Keren in my back pocket. So I want my audience to feel that same way through this whole episode. So tell us a little bit about your journey, because I feel like this is a really important piece of the puzzle of how you went from big corporate to I am going to serve the small business owner.
Yes, I always joke that my journey is a little bit of a zigzag. So I, went to undergrad and straight into law school. I always really wanted to be a business lawyer since, I don't know, as long as we can remember. My family jokes that I used to talk about this as an 8 or 9-year-old. I don't know where that came from. My parents are not lawyers. I didn't come from a family of lawyers.
Wait, Keren, then how did you figure out your business name of not your father's lawyer?
It actually is, and he knows this, but it actually is named after my father's lawyer. So I worked for, early in my career, my father's lawyer. And he was a lot of what I didn't want to do. I thought he really he was a real, awesome lawyer. He was so good at what he did, but he was exactly what you imagine kind of that generation of lawyer to be, which is old school, big mahogany desk, suits, really condescending when he talks to his clients. Kind of everything's behind a paywall. And it wasn't him, it was the industry. And I kept thinking, there's a better way. There's a better way. We're not serving, we were a boutique corporate and securities firm. So yes, we took companies public. We raised millions of dollars in private offerings. And those were big and important pieces. But we had this huge sector of clients that were really small businesses. And at the time that I started practicing law, LegalZoom, which obviously is a household name today, was really still up and coming. And I kept telling he was the main managing partner of the firm, but the partners of the firm, I said, what if we offer flat fee entity formations, flat fee contract reviews or contract drafting? This is something that LegalZoom is doing. And they were like, nobody's going to do that. That's not a thing. That's just for people who don't kind of take law seriously and are more DIYers. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I think this is where it's going. I mean, this firm had no website. And when I told the firm, it's 2009, we should have a website, they said, people don't find corporate lawyers on the internet. And I saw that there was, it wasn't 1992, it was 2009. I said, maybe that's true. Maybe somebody's not saying, who's a lawyer that will take my company public? Let me Google that. But what people do is share information. Oh, I have this great law firm. They did my company or they helped me. What's their name? And you give them the name of the firm. And what do? You look it up on the internet. So on top of the billable hours I was doing as a young attorney, I built a website from scratch. I am not a website designer. I built a website. I built a LinkedIn presence. I built a Twitter presence. I started an email newsletter campaign. I have no marketing background. It just was common sense to me, right? This is how people find service providers. And it had a direct impact on the bottom line, which was actually really great because at the time we were kind of post crash, like in the middle of this great recession. Obviously, a lot of small businesses were not succeeding or were not spending money on lawyers, but they never fully agreed to shift the model to kind of meet the demands of modern day legal services. And that's what took me. First I left and went to it kind of to this big landlord developer in Southern California to work there. And then I finally said, I can do this differently. I can do this on my own. And I left. Well, I started this firm on accident as a blog, which was really, that was kind of where the cheeky name came from, which was sort of an access to information blog. I wanted small businesses to just have access to information. And so I started as a blog, and then it sort of turned into a business because, you know, friends and family and friends of friends started saying, hey, can you help me with my trademark? Can you review this contract? Can you help me with this entity? And I accidentally built a business on the side, and I started it in like 2014, and I left my full-time corporate job in 2019. Oh gosh, 2019 to do this full time. And I've been doing it full time ever since. But my dad's lawyer does think it's funny. He's now retired, but he does think it's funny that this was named after him. And he has acknowledged the need for modern legal services like this since then.
Oh my gosh. I think the best is that he's acknowledged the need for modern legal services. That is the best story, because every time I share your business with a friend, like a business friend, and I'm like, she has the best name. It's not your father's lawyer. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about protecting the small business. I think it's an afterthought for a lot of small business owners. And in my core, I mean, I was like raised Catholic and like raised with like, you should fear things and you should worry. So I guess my stomach always worried about like litigious things. So I knew intuitively when I started my business, I needed to be protected. So I think you were probably like the second person I ever paid money to, one, to learn how to start a business, and two, how to protect it. So what are some of the things that small business owners often overlook that truly should be up and running before you make your first transaction?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I will say, and this is where I really believe in kind of access to information, approachability, honesty, transparency, like you said, which is, you know, there is a place for a 75-page contract and, you know, with complex legalese in it. And it's not in the small business world for the most part. And I think that small business owners, especially those who have never worked with a lawyer or they're not really sure if they need it, that's kind of what they think about when they think about a lawyer. It's these complex transactions, these expensive, obviously. Lawyers are certainly not known for being affordable. And I think and the other flip side to that I see is that they kind of are like, I don't even know where to start. So I'm just kind of going to put my blinders on and hope for the best. And obviously, neither of those are good places to be. I'll be totally honest with you. I have met many, many business owners who have operated for 10 plus years, never had an issue. And they only come to me because either something spooks them, like something they get into a dispute with their own client and they're like, oh gosh, I don't have any protections here. Or they hear about something in their industry or a friend and they say, oh gosh, it's time now for me to kind of think about these things and take care of it. So I don't think that anybody that's listening should be fearful or worried saying, oh my gosh, I've been operating for X number of years and I've never even thought about this stuff. When we talk about it, there's never a too late time to consider these things. But obviously the benefit of thinking about legal upfront or before there's a problem is that proactive legal support is almost always cheaper and less stressful than reactive legal support. So, you know, responding to a cease and desist and rebranding is usually much more costly and time consuming than protecting your business with a trademark upfront. or having a contract in place that kind of goes through the clauses of how you handle dispute resolution with a client or customer is always going to be simpler and cheaper than trying to figure out what to do when you don't have that. So I think that that's why people should be thinking about legal in general. But I would say if you have the benefit of, before you start or before you launch a new product or service, then there's a few main things. And we always talk about it, is thinking about how the relationship works logistically and where that might go wrong. So you obviously, as a business owner, have a client or a customer, and you want to provide a product or service to them. Where are the places that things could go wrong? If you're a product-based business, you have, refunds and returns, shipping problems, dissatisfaction with the product. Obviously, on the riskier side, product liability issues. If you have a service-based business and your clients get some sort of service, same thing, similar, but like payment disputes, again, dissatisfaction with the services. And I have a lot of creative businesses and we see a lot of disputes or issues around, scope or satisfaction with the final product when, creative services are subjective in a lot of ways. And so how do we get to a place to confirm that somebody, a business has delivered the services they said they were going to deliver? And so when you think through kind of what that customer or client life cycle looks like and where the biggest problems are, and this is what we always see from a service-based business, your biggest risk areas are the scope of work. Are you providing what you said you're providing? Are they wanting out of scope services? Was it clear enough? Can you agree to what the scope is? Payment, obviously, deposits, payment, milestones, delivery of whatever you're providing, deliverables or services before, after payment, intellectual property ownership, confidentiality, sharing. If you're a brand designer, for example, and maybe you provide different mood boards, and then you don't want them sharing that, kind of taking the mood boards and then being like, my friend can now take this and turn it into something instead, and I don't want that, right? You want control over what you own and what they own. And then, of course, products, like we talked about. And so I think thinking through those pieces helps you determine what you need. So contracts, and when I say contract, I'm speaking very broadly. Obviously, online terms, privacy policies, website terms and conditions, those are legally binding contracts. If you collect any information whatsoever, which pretty much every website today does, you're legally required to have a privacy policy. This is a miss I see all the time in small and sometimes larger businesses where they don't have a privacy policy. I think people get a little bit freaked out, like, what am I supposed to do and how do I do it? In its simplest form, you just need to share with your website visitors what you collect, how you collect it, what are you doing with it, how are you storing it, how are you protecting it. It's not that complex. If you are a sort of informational website where maybe you collect email addresses for your newsletter, you probably have like Google Analytics set up, maybe you have Meta or Pinterest Pixel. Those are all considered personal information for purposes of information collection and require privacy policy. And you should be linking to those third-party privacy policies themselves. So for example, with something like Meta Pixel, that would be, Facebook, Threads, Instagram, all of Meta's platforms. They have their own privacy policy. And when you're using like the Pixel, it's really this third-party platform, Meta, that's collecting and analyzing that data. And you can kind of get access to certain pieces of that. But you have to disclose that. If you have a more complex website, like if people can check out on e-commerce, obviously, if you have a booking platform where people can book services and pay for them, then obviously you want to have more, you're probably collecting, names, email addresses, physical addresses, phone numbers, credit card information, even if it's being stored on a third-party platform like Stripe. So you might not have access to actual credit card information, but those are the things that you want to think about when you are setting something up and collecting that information, because it is legally required, and we see that as a miss. And then obviously contracts, direct, one-on-one with clients if you're doing that. Terms and conditions would be where you would have kind of what we were talking about, like refund policies or return policies. If you have any sort of services, you might have like a no-show or cancellation policy. Those are the kinds of things that you're thinking about. And that goes back to what I said at the beginning, which is, what does the customer or the client journey look like, and where might those pain points or disputes show up? And the more clarity and transparency you have up front, the less likely you're going to have a problem.
Yes, I like and they're so simple too. It's like, and I love how you created your template shop as well, because for simple things like this, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the best way to do this is go buy a template, put your stuff in it, and put it on your website, and you're done in 45 minutes. Am I correct?
Yeah, yes and no. It depends. A lawyer's favorite word. It depends. So yes, the template shop that I have and many other lawyers have is to be this kind of gap filler for people from like nothing to custom. There is a template in the middle. And I think it's hard for people. I think there's a few things that people need to remember. On the internet, literally anybody can sell quote unquote legal templates. So it's not, Michelle, if you wanted to, you could start selling legal templates tomorrow.
I will not be doing that.
I know. And it shouldn't be allowed. Because obviously, and I've seen a lot of industry experts sell contract templates, but if you're not a lawyer, it's a little bit risky. I'll just say that. It's a little bit risky.
Keren, I'm dying right now. So an industry expert sells a contract. They're not an attorney. So do they have a contract that covers their butt for when that contract that they're selling goes? It's like a contract.
Probably
after,
not.
do you see what
because
I'm saying?
If they're right. Probably not. Yeah. So it is, and listen, an industry expert might have had a lawyer. I've done this. I have clients that have like memberships in their industry, and they have paid me to create a template for them to sell to their clients. Obviously, it comes with disclaimers from me. It comes with disclaimers from them. It's a gap filler. But yes, this is what I think people kind of overthink it. And I will say this, it's not a wise idea to go to a competitor or somebody in the same industry and copy and paste their privacy policy and their terms. Why? First of all, I cannot tell you how many websites I have been on their privacy policy or terms, and there are literal links to other people's websites because they haven't gone through. So it'll be like, check out our privacy, it's on the terms. It'll be like, check out our privacy policy. You click on it and it's like, it's Sephora's, privacy policy or whatever. And you're like, oh my gosh. I've actually seen a client get a cease and desist because they copied like a big brand's privacy policy, and it was linked to their
oh my God,
the big brand thing. So there are kind of like a maybe don't do that sort of situations, but a template can be a really good thing. And obviously, I'm biased here because I have and sell templates, but there are a lot of us in the industry that are actually experts and professionals in this particular area and sell templates for kind of a wide variety of prices. And I will say, I won't name names, but there are some very highly ranked, I'll say, on SEO websites that you can Google and find for free. Like if you Googled free privacy policy templates, and they are not good. So I would just caution people, free is not always good.
Yes. You get what you pay for sometimes.
Paid is not always good either, right? This is what I'm saying is do a little research. If you're going to pay for a legal template, do some research on that business and make sure that it's a lawyer. Even lawyers, like I know a lot of lawyers who were like, I don't know, family lawyers, and they were just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And now I became the difference. Obviously, I've always worked as a business lawyer. So I have worked with businesses from zero to, NASDAQ. And so I obviously understand it. And there's a lot of us like that, but there's also real lawyers that are in this industry, but without the experience and the expertise.
Yes. So the moral of the story is be careful who you're buying them policies from.
Yeah, just be discerning and know, but knowing what that basics is. What am I collecting? What am I doing with it? How am I storing it? Am I sharing it? Obviously, probably, I mean, for small businesses, it's almost never the case that any business that is sharing any data or selling any data, do not use a template, period. Do not use a template. Use a lawyer.
Cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about one of my favorite topics, which is recurring revenue, which is usually driven by a membership or a subscription. And I believe almost every business underneath the sun has an opportunity to create recurring revenue. And that goes from an online business to a local small business. It could be a med spa, doggy daycare. I mean, I could go on and on for days, right? But there are a lot of laws around subscriptions and membership and those recurring charges. So can you share some of the most newsworthy conversation around this of what's the most up-to-date things that we need to know as business owners when it comes to subscriptions and billing?
Yes. And I totally agree. I actually have a membership. So I totally agree that every business has an opportunity, and it's a really great opportunity for small businesses to scale and also to provide something unique to their clients and customers. So I am all about subscriptions and memberships. I think it's a really cool add-on piece to any business. But there are, obviously, it's kind of the Wild West right now because this is a new area. I mean, obviously it's not new to have subscriptions and memberships, but for it to be so kind of across the table, all these businesses are doing it. It's a new area of law, and every state is different. And this is one of the trickiest pieces. So even if you're a small business, something that's really cool about subscriptions and memberships is that that's actually often the way that small brick and mortar businesses open their doors to selling out of state, selling across the world, right? Is having these opportunities. But what you have to know is that the state's rules of where the customer lives are typically what matters when it comes to the relationship with that customer. So I'll give you an example because I'm in California, and obviously California is known for having some of the strictest kind of consumer-friendly laws. So California, the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission, is the federal body that governs marketing on businesses across a federal level. And a few years ago, they actually came out with a rule that was this new click to cancel rule. And I created a ton of education on it. And then at the last minute, the administration decided that they weren't going to pursue enforcement and implementation of this new rule. So that's kind of on a federal level is on pause. What makes it tricky is that on a state level, a lot of these states already had and continue to develop similar rules. So understanding what they are. So I always tell people, sometimes it's useful to know, obviously, if you're fully operating in state, in just your state, it's easy to understand because you can kind of stay up to date on your state's rules and apply them accordingly. But if you have the ability for people outside of state lines to purchase subscriptions or memberships, it's important to understand what those rules are. And sometimes I say the best practice is to go with the strictest version. So in California, there are very strict rules, and they're similar to kind of what the click to cancel rules, the federal click to cancel rules were going to be. But in a nutshell, as a matter of practice, what somebody should be doing, and I think this is just good business because you want people in your subscription or membership that want to be there, and fighting chargebacks or fighting with customer service issues is honestly more headache than it's worth often to keep the customer. So I really feel like there's two pieces to this. There's the actual legal rules, and then also just what's good business practice that can minimize conflict, minimize chargebacks. Is we could do a whole podcast on chargebacks because even if you have all the language and all the contracts, it's not always an easy win with the banks. So trying to avoid those problems up front is always the best thing. So a few things that you want to do. And the number one, and this is sort of just if I had a thesis for running a business, it would be transparency. Because the more your customer understands up front, the less likely there will be a conflict. So be transparent. What is it that they're signing up for? What are they getting? When are they billed? How much are they billed? Is there an introductory deal, like a free trial or 50% off for the first 3 months? If there is, this is not always the law. This is in some states it may be, but as a matter of practice, if you're giving somebody a free introduction or a discounted introduction as a matter of practice to avoid issues, I always recommend putting them on automated emails that remind them that they're going to the full price as of X date, and here's how to cancel if they don't want to, right? Because what happens is somebody gets charged and they're like, what the heck? Because obviously they signed up for the 30-day free trial and they forgot about it. And then they get a bill, and that's where the chargebacks happen. A lot of people don't even try to fight the company. They just go straight to their bank because they're like, I don't want to deal with this. So being clear about when they renew. If you have long subscriptions, like a year long, the click to cancel law was going to require this, but states like California do require this, which is a notice between California's is like between 5 and 30 days. So no more than 30 days, no less than 5 days before it renews. They have to get a notice of the renewal. But I personally think that's a great practice because, again, you want that recurring revenue to be people who actually want to be there and not people who are fighting chargebacks with you, because of those, like not knowing when it's being renewed.
Yeah, there was, I can't remember what product I recently bought, but I always research products clearly before I purchase them. And it was one that I thought had a pretty aggressive funnel. And I think anybody listening who's in marketing or sales knows what I'm talking about, but it was just like everything it could do to get you to be a subscription buyer instead of a one-time transaction. But I had heard so many great things about the product. So I just went and I went in there and did a little research about them. And the top things that show up is on Reddit about everybody pissed that they're getting charged subscriptions when they didn't know that's what was happening. So I think what the lesson here is do you want people on Reddit talking about your sketchy billing practices or your great products?
Right.
So there is a cost to that, those tactics sometimes. So to your point, and I ended up actually still purchasing the product because I guess I just knew what they were doing and I didn't feel like I was being tricked. But if you're not a savvy online person, you would absolutely probably think you're being tricked or manipulated. So that's a huge lesson to this. It's you don't want the first thing showing up on Reddit, how you charge people when they didn't give you permission.
Yes. And I think that there is, this depends. Obviously, there is a very large, again, I won't name names, but there's a very large software company that is, let's just say you might use their products to view PDFs, but they have many, many products and they are notoriously awful for jumping through hoops to cancel. It's impossible to understand how to cancel. They moved to, I think, a subscription only model. And they are notoriously impossible. And this is a great example that we kind of touched on, which is, the FTC regulates this stuff. And I think people hear about these big companies, or I talk about the Kardashians a lot because they get in trouble all the time for violating FTC. But the reason is because obviously everything that they hawk sells out. So there is understandably extra scrutiny when you have an influencer that is selling, cryptocurrency in violation of securities laws, that they're going to get a cease and desist from the government saying you can't do this. But that doesn't mean that small businesses don't also get these letters. And there can be fines, there can be penalties. So it's not oh, I'm not a Kardashian, so don't worry about it. You don't have to have 10 million followers on social media to get in trouble for violating these rules. And exactly what you're saying, Michelle, about people on Reddit, people, when they're angry, we all know as business owners, if they're happy, they're not going to say anything. They might tell their friends and stuff, but if they're mad, they're going to go to the Better Business Bureau and to Yelp and to Google and to Reddit. And you want to try to avoid those things. Number one, because it's just a marketing nightmare. But number two, because there can actually be consequences, fines, penalties. And so if you are not transparent, and this goes back to this very large software company that has makes you jump through hoops. The federal click to cancel rule that was supposed to come in is that it was supposed to be as easy to cancel as it is to sign up. So if they can sign up online, they have to cancel online. You can't be sign up here by clicking this one click button because I've made it so easy for you. But to cancel, Call us from, 9 to 12, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, then leave us a voicemail, then refer to the email. You know what I mean? Like jumping through hoops, nobody responds. It has to be at least 15 days before the billing period. Otherwise, you have to do it all over again. You cannot make people jump through hoops. And again, you don't want to, because that's where the angry Reddit threads come from, which is, people, if you had somebody that felt duped, but then they sent you an angry email and you said, I'm really sorry. Here is our policy. However, as a courtesy, we're going to just cancel this for you. Sorry that you didn't like our product or service or whatever. They're not going to go to Reddit and write an angry thread. They might even say something nice, So that's the key.
Yeah, and it's all about your business reputation too. I'm like, what do you want to spend your time and money on? Trying to beg people or manipulate them to keep paying you, or go out and spend that energy getting customers and clients that want to work with you or want to buy your products? Like, here's your prioritization, people.
Exactly. And this goes back to what I said before when it comes to, contracts or terms or even entity formation and protection, is that you could operate kind of in the Wild West without any protections or not doing anything in compliance. And maybe nothing will happen. Maybe you won't have angry customers, or maybe they're annoyed and there's a Reddit thread, but it doesn't impact your business. But it could. And obviously a large, multi-million or billion-dollar company can afford a bunch of angry customers where small businesses can't. So they have to think a little bit more thoughtfully about where to expend their time, money, and energy. And usually that is exactly what you're saying, is focusing on a product or service that people love, that people want. And transparency is key to that recurring revenue.
Yes. And I think one last thing I want to say on this topic, and then I want to transition to how you built your business, because I think it's going to be a really fun conversation. There's this book called Unreasonable Hospitality. Have you ever heard about it?
I have heard it, yes.
Okay. So I had to read it when I took on a hospitality client. It was like a required reading for this company. And I read it, and I actually didn't realize that everyone's kind of in hospitality if you own a business. So this book was specifically for your traditional hospitality, which would be like restaurants, lodging, camps, like all that kind of stuff. But the premise of this, which I think is really just beautiful, is delight your customers, delight your clients, go above and beyond, and it doesn't actually have to cost you any money. And I'm going to give an example right now. So we were in Moab over the weekend, and Abby, my daughter, and I went to go and get some breakfast. And she was craving like a breakfast sandwich, either a bagel or English muffin, eggs, bacon. That's all she wanted. Okay. So we're walking around and we stop at this one place to look at the menu. And I could tell it was the owner who was the host at the moment. You can just usually tell. And I was like, oh, we just want to see a menu before we sit down. And he's like, well, you don't even need the menu. What is it that you want? And I was like, well, she's craving something specific. And so Abby shared what she wanted with like the English muffin, blah, blah, and crispy bacon, please. It was like very specific. And he's like, that's not on the menu, but we're going to make it for you. Can I sit you down? And we went right in and we sat down. And all they had to do, they had all of the pieces, right? They just literally had to put it into a sandwich for her. Right. And it for sure, it's on my list today to write a review about the unreasonable hospitality of how sweet that was. Right. So it doesn't always, and I just want to remind everyone, keep your customers, recurring revenue, subscriptions, delight them, make them feel appreciated. And like that will exponentially grow any business.
Absolutely.
Every sales leader has good intentions of doing call review, but it actually never happens. You have this sense of guilt as your reps wait to get your feedback. So you randomly grab a 30-second snippet of a call and feel good about yourself. Yet it doesn't actually solve the problem. It just tells your reps you checked it off your to-do list. This was my life as a sales leader before I discovered Objectionly. Objectionly is an AI software that reviews every sales call to deliver the truth about why more dials aren't turning into set appointments and why more demos aren't ending in a lovely wire transfer. You can see each rep's biggest problems, the moments in every call that it happens, and immediately click into these moments to watch them. Get every sales call scored against your sales script to see what went wrong in every dial or closing call and what needs to be done differently to improve. No more sales call marathons late into the night when numbers are bad to find the issue. No more asking sales reps what their problems are and getting opinions instead of facts. Just clear insights on how the team is doing in seconds without spending hours doing call review. Go ahead and cancel your 3-hour time block on your calendar for call review today, because in the next 5 minutes, you can upload a sales call and immediately see why your reps are losing easy to win deals. If you want this for your sales team, click below and watch a short 3-minute video on how it works and try it out on a free 14-day trial. So what I want to talk about right now is discipline. Okay. My favorite topic, actually, discipline and focus. Now, I would argue 99.9% of business owners have some type of ADHD or ADD because that's why they ended up going into business for themselves.
Sure.
And I'm one of them. And so I think it's like a huge thing. So something I have personally struggled with is the focus on one thing. The focus on one thing over these last almost 10 years of business. Cause just like you, we have literally the same timeline. It was like part-time, side hustle, full-time, right? And, I've stuck to my like core of all about sales and growth, but there's been a lot of fluctuation on how I'm delivering those services or those products. But I can always tell, like out of all of my business friends, like I've always just had an enormous amount of respect for you because you have stayed so disciplined to this is who I serve, this is what I offer, and here we go. So can you tell us a little bit about your business structure and your offers? And that's the first thing. The second thing I want to talk about is how you have stayed disciplined, even maybe if you wanted to do something slightly different.
That's so funny. This is so timely. I was literally just spent all of last week cleaning out my offers and my freebies and my funnels with my OBM. I was like, I need to reduce. So
I need to reduce.
Very timely. I would say how my business is structured. What I really stick to is reminding myself of, and this is so cheesy, and I'm not this person, but it's so true. Reminding myself of my why when I get a little bit of that business owner ADHD. Which is, and what about this? And what about this? And oh, this is a cool new thing that people are doing. It's hard. You really have that shiny object syndrome as a business owner. And then I try to step back and say, why am I doing this? Why? Well, I'm trying to serve a very specific type of customer. And for me, what I set out to do is to fill a gap basically between the people who know that they might need to talk to an attorney, but they're scared to, or they think they can't afford it. And the people who are like, I'll just hire a law firm and I'll pay $500 an hour, no problem. And there's this huge sector of small business owners and freelancers and creatives that they know that their business would be better off if they had that legal support, but they can't afford a traditional firm, or they're afraid of it, or maybe they've been burned. I have a lot of clients that have come to me and they were like, honestly, I only came to you because my friend told me about you, but I have like a terrible experience with a lawyer. And so mine was, and it's so funny that you talk about this unreasonable hospitality, because that's exactly how I would say, like, I worked in all service industries before I was a lawyer too. I worked in retail most of my, like from high school through, college and law school. I worked in all service oriented businesses. And I see any service business, including being a lawyer, as a service business. And so customer service is essential to me. So I basically am saying, am I properly serving this client and this industry? And is customer service at the forefront of everything I'm doing? And those are the two things. So the one-on-one legal services obviously was a given. Everything I do is flat fee. That's how I started this business. I was like, I form entities, I write contracts, I review contracts, I do trademarks over and over and over again. I know about how long. I'm not always right. Sometimes I think something's going to take me, 3 hours and I charge that way and it takes me 7. Like it does. It's not a perfect system. But I prefer, and I know that my type of client will come to me because knowing how much it's going to cost from the get-go is enough to sort of allay their fears of coming to a lawyer and working with a lawyer and spending that money, because even though I am highly affordable, it's not cheap, right?
Right.
Like services are not cheap. And I've had this conversation. I have a very good friend who is also a business owner, and he had asked me all the time, he always asks me, couldn't you just undercut the small firms by 20% instead of charging so little? And I said, sure, I could, but I wouldn't be serving the clients I want to serve. It wouldn't be my why. And I think that's why I stay focused on that. And then the other piece to that is, and this is how the templates and the membership came about, which is, what do my clients need? And what they need is a few things. Sometimes they don't actually need a lawyer. What they want is very simple and straightforward. And a template for $150 or $250 is exactly what they need, rather than a custom version effectively of a template, right?
Mm-hmm.
For $750. And so that's where that started, is creating these templates that I saw, hey, I think that we can templatize some of these to fill that gap for people who still aren't even ready to work with a lawyer, not even a flat fee affordable lawyer. And then the membership, which is the newest of the offerings, came about because I said, so many of my clients, like obviously as a flat fee lawyer, I'm doing project-based work. I'm not like a lawyer on retainer, but I have clients that are like, oh, I just really want to ask this, or especially in the age of AI, people that they're like, I know I shouldn't ask ChatGPT this, but I'm going to anyway. And so having an affordable way to be able to be like, I'm just going to email my lawyer instead, or I'm going to come and get legal education. My membership has like monthly legal education on a topic relevant for small businesses. It has drop-in office hours. It has access to the template shop, which we're always adding to, email access to a lawyer. And so those are the things that it was basically based on what my customers and my clients needed. And that's how I built kind of the versions, but they're all back to that core, is the why am I doing this? Because I want to serve. I'm so passionate about small business owners getting access to all the same things. I have like a pipe dream about having like it's not like a incubator, because incubators, they kind of like, they want companies that are like 10x their business, so that they can make money. But I want like a small business incubator where you basically get access to like a C-suite of experts that will help you build the business. And I'm like, maybe it needs to be a nonprofit, because how do you pay for this? But I am so passionate, and everything's back to that access to information, access to education for small business owners. And so I think that in that sense, that's kind of how I built the structure of what I offer.
Yeah, I think that the nonprofit angle, I think, would be pretty amazing for that. But you're right, because it would be to get all those experts in the room that aren't expecting a 10x exit from a traditional incubator would be really challenging. But I actually, you know what, Keren, I'm here for it.
Now
right?
I have my CMO now.
Yeah, you've got your CRO. Yeah, you got your marketing and sales gal over here. Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so let's also talk about balancing. You have a big job. You have built a significant business, and we have similar aged kids. And you know what I find interesting is, I know the both of us work a lot. Like we always have. That's how you build a business. But for me, it's like, I'd rather work 100 hours a week in my own business than 40 hours for somebody else who tells me when I can pick my kids up. So how have you managed your own expectations, your stress levels, all the things that happen when you're a small business owner raising a family?
Well, Michelle, this I would say is my biggest weakness and the thing I'm working on in my life. It's really challenging. I actually joke because I'm a middle child, but I have like eldest daughter vibes. And I was raised to do it all, not on purpose. Like I had come from a very, very supportive. I'm very close to my family, my parents, my siblings they're so supportive. They're so encouraging. I don't know where like this really developed, somewhere that I'm very extrinsically motivated. And I got a lot of, I think, wow, she can do it all feedback, especially as a young mom. And so I'm trying to unlearn that, is the total honest truth. And it's hard.
Yeah.
So here's where I am totally transparently in my life and business, which is, and I've worked on this with my therapist a lot, which is, I need help. I have a really wonderful and supportive husband, and he is a 50-50 partner in life, which is so important if you have a partner, obviously. But he travels a lot for work, and he works at a very large organization in a very big job. And so he's only as available as his job allows him to be. And so I have much more flexibility. And people kind of were like, my kids are very, very active in sports, as I think yours are too. And so every afternoon, like 3:30 is kind of like the end of my work day, because I have to start doing this Uber driving of my tweens to their sports. And it's 5 to 7 days a week. I mean, it's every day. And a lot of back and forth. This, son has to be at baseball, daughter has to be at soccer, then pick up son from baseball, drop him at this thing, basketball, whatever. And I could get a nanny or a mother's helper or somebody else to do that. But that is the absolute most important piece of my life right now. I get the best conversations with my kids in those car drives. They, unload about their day. They tell me about the school, friends, and whatever. And I was like, will not give that up right now. That is the most important thing to me. And so with the urging of my therapist, she said, well, maybe then you need to not do it all in your business. So slowly but surely, I have been delegating more and more in my business to get support, primarily for things that are non-substantive obviously in the legal work. I have here and there, I use some contract support for overflow work, but I have an OBM who is wonderful. And she, every time I'm like, I want to do this, or can we automate this or whatever, she's actually in the background doing like an awesome new updated automation. We were like, how many manual touch points do I have in this client journey? And we're reducing it from 10 to 3. And so it takes a lot to give. I mean, any business owner is like, it's my baby. Nobody can do it as well as I can. But being able to turn over some of the things. And I think that I really had to see this, like other people will say this. And again, I'm like, these things, but it's hard to, in practice, it's hard to do, which is you have to have that kind of CEO energy, right? I can't be like a solo practitioner and scale. And I was very burned out doing it all. So I've given up things that are not as important, that are important in the business, but not as important to me to personally handle. And I haven't given up. So something I love to do, because it is core to who I am, is the educational piece. So I will not give up my social media mark. Every single thing I post and share on social media is created by me, written by me, filmed by me, whatever. And I won't give it up, because that's so core to my message and my brand and who I am. But again, you have to make those decisions. What are you willing to give up? And so as a parent in particular, or a mother for me, but I think any parent has this balance, is where you have your kind of parenting role and you have your business role, and you have to give up something to be able to do. So for me right now, those afternoons driving my kids to sports are non-negotiable for me in this chapter of our life. And so I have had to let go of some things in my business in order to make room for that. And I think that's something I'm still really working on, but I'm doing better.
Oh, you know what? I love this conversation. So as you know, I act as a fractional CRO. And so there's a lot of mixed calendars in my life, because when I'm a fractional CRO, like my clients can put time on my calendar and their clients can book on, there's a lot of like moving pieces. So 2 years ago, I would have never blocked my calendar. I'm here for it. You have me on retainer. And now I literally have it visible. I am picking up my children at this time and I am unavailable. And it literally says it. It's not even like a doctor's appointment. It's like picking up Abby, right? And you know what I've noticed? I work with lots of very high power, successful CEOs. They're like, cool. awesome. And so like today, one of them put something on my calendar, but he paid attention to when I need to leave my house because it's on the calendar. So we made it a 45-minute meeting. So I had the 15 minutes to get to my daughter. And I'm like, and there's no complaining. There's no pushback. There's no dissatisfaction. And I think and I will just speak for myself on this. I think a lot of like women like me were like, I'm similar in a lot of ways of like powerful. I can do it all. We forget that boundaries are okay and actually welcomed.
Yes.
And quite frankly, most men do it and don't even give it a second thought. Right. And it's so interesting to me because most of my CRO clients, are men and they have families and their wives don't work for the most part. So it's really interesting, but they're so respectful of the boundaries. So I think the lesson here is like, set it up, set the expectations. And to your point to the whole episode is transparency. And then people will love working with you. So I think it's just really powerful. All right. So my favorite question at the end, favorite one. All right. What is the most rascal thing you have ever done in business?
I think that, and I did allude to this, obviously, in the way that my business came about, but I would say the most rascal thing I did was to not be afraid to shake up the industry a little bit, because when I moved to, flat fee, project-based legal work, it didn't exist in a really significant way in the legal industry. And I said to myself, I don't want to be chasing the new way to do law. I want to be at the forefront of it. And I think that I have stuck to that for the most part with these kind of changes and additions to, I'm not the first to market by any means, but I think that not being afraid to say, this is not the right way to do this anymore. And there is a better way. And it can be customer or client led, based on their needs and not what I think is best for them. And that was very, very different than the legal industry has been built. The legal industry was really built on, we know best and we're going to tell you what's right and what to do. And I see myself as, I always tell my clients, you are the expert in your business. I'm just here to sort of guide you from a legal perspective, but I'm not going to tell you what's right in your business. And I think that has been a huge shift. And I do think that in a lot of ways, I have been a leader in this area of law. And I like that. That's exactly what I set out to do, which is I don't want to be, chasing the newest legal Zoom, right? I want to be the newest legal Zoom. And it's been fun. And having acknowledgement from my father's lawyer that in fact, these ideas were good. And that he's really impressed with the way that I built this firm and the kind of different way that I practice law, I think kind of brought it full circle and validated it for me.
Yes, that does feel really, really good. All right. So if my listeners are interested in your services or your membership, how do they get more information?
You can find me at my website, which is notyourfatherslawyer.com. And I'm mostly on Instagram with my educational content. It's at notyourfatherslawyer. And I have free consultations. If you have questions, obviously there's templates. The membership will be open, and I'm always happy to answer questions because that is my passion.
Oh, I love it. Well, Keren, thank you so much for your time today. It was so fun to see you and to catch up. And thank you for always protecting my business.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Thanks for listening to Revenue Rascals, where we turn bold ideas into predictable revenue and prove that breaking the rules can still build empires. If you love what you heard, do me a favor. Tap the links in the show notes to support our sponsors. They're the ones keeping this show free so I can keep ungating the strategies that help you scale faster, lead smarter, and take more freedom home with you. And hey, if you think you'd make an incredible guest or know someone who's built something worth studying, email me at hello@michelleterpster.com. And until next time, stay sharp, stay bold, and stay just a little bit rascal.